So I'm really excited today to start talking about the World War II home front, like what was happening at home in America. And this presents a different side of war besides just the fighting and the battles and the blood and the guts and all that stuff. Because what takes place in America, for the most part, is pretty awesome. Because America gets all into this war. This is a total war. Total meaning everything, every aspect in the country is totally involved in this war. And so at this point, if you haven't listened to that song, Praise the Lord and Pass the Ammunition, I want you to do that now because it really sets up this part of our unit in a good way. And that's just showing that it's not just soldiers and the government that was involved in this war effort. It's everyday people. It's pop culture. It's arts. It's theater. It's TV. It's children. It's school. Everything. So again, if you haven't done that, go ahead and pause this video and go do that now. And so in the home front, our soldiers fought very, very bravely. I mean, America comes in, we take one of the leading rules. Without us, the war would not have been won. But it's not just the soldiers. The people at home, right? The people in America, they fight their own way as well. Yes, we fought. Yes, we gathered intelligence. Yes, we're going to make this huge impact. But we save ourselves and we save the world in a different way. And if America at home didn't do this, the war, I'm telling you, would not be won. And what did America do on the home front? Guys, they built things. I mean, awe-inspiring, totally all hands in, built the things needed for war. It was really America's greatest contribution to the war, and that was the American war production. And I like this quote from FDR right here. It says, "Powerful enemies must be outfought and outproduced." Remember, Britain wasn't preparing for war. America wasn't preparing for war. Hitler is in the Soviet Union, obviously tearing that country apart. We already saw that. And so they're not in a position to create things for the war either. And England's getting bombed, with the Blitz left and right, totally ruined. I've told you this before, and I'm going to tell you again. After the war, there's no roads in Europe. And so all of the production needed to outpace and take out Hitler and his awesome war machine has to come from the United States. And we are all in as a country, and they have a name for it. It's called the Work or Fight Campaign. Literally meaning, if you're not fighting, you better be in a factory making some stuff to fight, okay? You best be doing something to help the boys over there win this war, because literally, it's fight or die, okay? We don't get this, we get one shot. And if we don't get it right, the Japanese are going to take over the world, the Germans are going to take over the world, end of democracy, end of our lives as we know it. And this is one of the reasons why this generation is known as the greatest generation, because literally everybody sacrificed. Everybody sacrificed. And we're going to see that whether you were an elderly person, whether you were a child, whether you had sons, daughters, mothers, fathers, aunts, uncles, literally everybody had some type of part in this war. Very, very awesome, very, very patriotic, very cool time period. So let's kind of do a little overview of what the factories. Okay, let's look at some numbers, right? America, 90,000 tanks. And if you remember, we said, one of Hitler's greatest accomplishments was making the Panzer Division. They needed American tanks to come in to actually take that down because they were unstoppable. Guess what? We did this. 2 million Jeeps. The Jeeps are awesome. And you're going to see a little video a little later on that talks about this. But this is the perfect thing for war. And it sounds so simple that says something like a car is going to help win the war for us. But it actually really does. In fact, I think it's in Beaver or Butler County. Oh, I can't remember. There's actually a museum that talks about the invention of the Jeep. It's because it was actually produced in the Pittsburgh region. I said 2 million Jeeps. I meant 2 million trucks. Sorry. Yeah, go in the den. Okay. So here's the Jeep right here. We have almost 300. Shut the door. 300,000 aircrafts, which again, we'll need to take on Hitler, and 47 billion small arms ammunition. 47 billion. And let me tell you, they're going to get used. Okay? They're going to get used. And so this too, I love this picture. The long range bomber. We start basically not just putting people in factories, but the government starts employing scientists, engineers, like research people to really figure out how to take down the German war machine through technology. So, little fun fact, this B-24 Liberator long-range bomber, it has over 1 billion parts to it, okay? 1 million, I said billion, excuse me. It has 1.5 million parts. So you would think to yourself, how long would it take to literally put together a machine that has 1 million parts? You might think maybe a couple weeks, right? At the very least, a few days, even if you have like tons of people on it. 63 minutes. That's how long it took to build this machine. 63 minutes. That's how well-oiled of a machine we had home in America, that a whole airplane with over 1 million parts can be made in 63 minutes. We end up launching more vessels in 1941 than Japan did in the entire war. Okay, by the end of the war, here, let me show you this. Okay, I like this chart because it kind of goes to show you what I'm talking about. By the end of the war, more than half of all production in the world took place in the United States. Okay, took place in the United States. So how did we do this? That's what we're going to be talking about the next couple of days. There's tons of factors into this. Let's talk about one factor on how we did this. And again, if you take a look at this, you can see this is U.S. production. The only other one that we can really compare to is the Soviet Union, and you can see they are definitely not out making us again in tanks. Again, we're pretty close, okay? But you can see that America had some really impressive numbers. So how did we do this? One way we did this is by really ramping up production and making sure that all Americans were involved. And again, that was part of that work or fight campaign. Where the government, we're sending out propaganda. We're sending out, it's actually kind of a beautiful thing where you have everybody on it. You have celebrities, you have athletes, you have musicians, okay? The news, the movies, the media, the president, like teachers. Everybody was encouraging everybody to get involved in one way or the other. And so we see that all Americans are working together to help with this total war machine here in America. And so you actually saw, and it's kind of comparison to today where where like President Trump is trying to get private companies to make things for the coronavirus. So I think it was GM a little while ago that said that they were going to start working on ventilators in their factories. And this is the kind of stuff that we saw, but it wasn't just like one company here, one company there. It was all companies, okay? All companies got together, stopped what they were producing, and produced stuff for the war effort. Let me give you a little example. 1941, okay? Right before America gets involved in this war. We know we get involved, we declare war December 8th, 1941, the day after Pearl Harbor. That year, remember, we're coming out of a Great Depression, okay? 3 million cars were manufactured in the United States. In the total years that followed the war, how many cars get produced the whole time we're at war? 139. That's it, 139. Why? Because all factories were used for war effort. And that also meant that Americans were sacrificing by not buying cars, by not buying luxury goods, for doing literally everything they can. And think about how hard this would be, okay? They just got out of the Great Depression. Okay, so for maybe a decade plus, you have people that are suffering that have no money, right? All they want to do is have a good life. Now they're finally working. They have extra money. They can go out and buy luxury goods. But instead of doing that, they're putting stuff toward the war effort. They're making their old cars running, right? They're keeping their old appliances going. They're not buying to sacrifice the war. And it's funny because Georgia and I mean, it's not a joke. I'm going to do this. But like after this whole coronavirus thing is over and I'm allowed out of my house, I'm taking my girls shopping. Okay? I want to go to the mall. I want to shop. I'm going to spend a crazy amount of money, which I'm not going to tell my husband. But that's because like I'm itching to do that, right? So think about, I mean, that's just me in quarantine, like in 2 months. Think about, I'm not in quarantine, by the way. That's not what I meant. Okay, at home. But like, think about the anxiousness to go and buy something and finally take a breath, and we have this good life and we have this money, and I just want to go ahead and I want to buy the house and I want to buy the car and I want to buy the luxury goods and be happy. And they're not. They're not. It's awe-inspiring. It's very, very cool. But with every up, there's a down. We talked about this in the beginning of the year. There's negative stuff. This right here, this picture. On a lot of, and not all of this, okay, this is a small part, but it was a part, and we have to acknowledge it. Some people were motivated based off of hate, okay? And it was hate for the Germans, it was hate for the Japanese that seeped into our culture and made us hate particularly Japanese people, Japanese Americans, people who didn't know how to speak Japanese, who'd never been to Japan, okay, who were full-blown blooded Americans. They get greatly, greatly discriminated. And you can see that our own federal government is using racism and hatred to motivate people to fight for the war effort. And so even though this is the greatest generation, even though what they did is awe-inspiring and awesome and totally unselfish, again, there's the dark side. And we're going to explore this more later on because it actually gets a lot worse. But you can see racism from this poster is all, it's a well alive during the World War II, and a lot of innocent Americans, a lot of patriotic Americans suffer because of it. Now, where did we get this money to do all this stuff? Okay, like just talking about like how the production of the world comes from the United States. It's not like we had a lot of tax revenue built up, save for a rainy day, because we just came out of the Great Depression. Well, obviously we're going to raise taxes, but raising taxes is not going to be enough to make 47 billion small arm ammunitions, right? So, oh, wait a second. I forgot about this line. Okay, you can see it. Lots of people worked. Gotcha. Okay, so how are we going to do this? War bonds. Okay, now what is a war bond? A war bond is basically loans to the government. And there is this huge campaign to it. They tied it to patriotism, but basically Americans were asked to go buy a war bond. So it might work like this. You go ahead, you spend $10 on a war bond, and then in 5 to 10 years, you can get your money back from the government, and then they would give you more. So like you would buy a war bond, let's say in 1942 for $10, and then in 1952, it would be worth $20. And so it's a small loan to the government, and then the government's going to pay you back interest. And they did this again by basically telling everybody, drilling it into their heads, really, really drilling it, a huge campaign, that it was your patriotic duty to do so. And again, here is another one of those posters, okay? And look at the racism in there. Look at the fear factor. Remember, we talked about this with World War I propaganda and the techniques that go into it. Well, you can see this is definitely fear in this poster. This one too. This is my fight too. Here's a woman going ahead, saving extra money to buy war bonds, okay? This one, I think this is really powerful. This one creeps me out. There's the little kids and they're playing outside and look, they're so happy. But dun, 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 here comes Hitler with their airplane and you can see the Nazi symbol afterwards. And don't let the shadow touch them, buy war bonds. So basically telling Americans that it's with their power to stop this. I gave a man. Will you give at least 10% of your pay to war bonds? Guilt. This one I love. You ready?
The tall man with a high hat and a whiskers on his chin will soon be knocking at your door. And you ought to be in. The tall man with the high hat will be coming down your way. Get your savings out when you hear him shout, any bonds today? Come on and get 'em, folks. Come on, skip right up and get 'em. Any bonds today? Bonds of freedom, that's what I'm selling. Any bonds today? Scrape up the most you can. Here comes the freedom man, asking you to buy your share of freedom today. Many stamps today. Give kiddies. We'll be blessed. We all invest in the USA. Sammy! My Uncle Sammy! Here comes the freedom man. Can't make tomorrow's plan. Not unless you buy a share of freedom today. Any stamps, any bonds today.
Okay, so even Bugs Bunny was involved in the war effort. Again, like you can see that this wasn't just I'm going to throw a couple campaign posters in there, but by the way, look what the psychological effect of these campaign posters are. It was people in America were inundated with this idea: buy war bonds, buy war bonds. And if you remember the picture from Iwo Jima, the soldiers, that's what they brought them home for. They brought them home to raise money. They brought them home to inspire people to buy war bonds. And without the war bonds, we wouldn't have been able to win. Let me show you this. More than 85 million Americans bought war bonds. And the war bond total came up to $185.7 billion in the 1940s. Okay? And so you can see the war wouldn't have been won without this. And so, yes, they were pushing a lot of people, but they were right to do that. And so here are some pictures of what the factories actually look like. I mean, you're talking about shifts, okay? Their factories in some cases are running 24 hours a day. They're using all aspects of society. Some of the work was actually really dangerous, but yet they did it all the time. You're talking about, double shifts, overtime, working 7 days a week, real big emphasis on volunteerism. And this is the total numbers, and I think this will put this in perspective. The war cost $330 billion, again, back in the 1940s. I should have looked up what that is today, but I didn't. And it cost 10 times the amount of World War I, and as much as all previous federal spending since 1776. I said 1976. Excuse me. 1776. So think about all of the spending plus 10 times the amount of World War I since our country was basically born, okay? And since we declared our independence. Austin's got Mickey. Okay, so you can see that, again, all hands on deck were needed. Otherwise, the war would not have been won. And half of this money, guys, it comes from war bonds, not taxes. It comes from people digging out of their own pocket to give to the war effort. And it wasn't like the United States was this huge industrialized power before the war. We weren't. Remember, we're in a Great Depression. And before the war, in 1939, for example, we ranked 39th in the world for industrialized power. And so we really got to change our game overnight by means of survival. And the effect of this is that this is going to carry us after the war and make America the superpower that it became. So that's it for today.